Hello, my dear ones, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Maria, and on this channel we talk about all things spirituality, consciousness, higher dimensions, higher planes, the energy of the higher self, energy work, and the mysteries of the universe. Welcome, welcome. Today I am feeling the energy of the rose come through very strong for the collective, and so I figured today we're going to be able to tackle a very important topic. The topic is divine florals. So I really wanted to talk to you about divine florals today. I love flowers. I work a lot with the energy of the flowers through the means of essential oils as well as the flower petals. The more I dive into my personal connection with the Divine Mother, the female face of Source, the more I uncover how instrumental working with flowers can be, and how it can be a true bridge between this time-space reality that can be quite dense and higher planes, opening up a path to higher wisdom, to a different caliber of intuitive knowing, and really to opening up our hearts to the extent that our hearts could be open. Flowers carry within themselves a very gentle footprint. It is the footprint of the divine feminine. In fact, I'll go as far as saying that out of most physical objects, flowers vibrate the closest to the frequency of Divine Mother. So they are truly her children and her projection into this time-space reality, into this dense world. There are 3.5 divine florals that I want to cover today. Really, it's 3, and one I just want to mention because I think that you guys need to know about that flower also. The 3 main ones we're going to be talking about today are rose, and I have my red roses here because I just could not resist. Also, I got gifted roses today, so I'm taking this as a sign totally, and we're doing everything in the flow. So rose is the first divine flower we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about lily, and we're going to talk about lotus. These are the 3. The half that I mentioned is another one which we're not necessarily going to do an exercise on, but I still figured it's worth mentioning. The 4th divine flower is an orchid. An orchid is a flower that is vibrationally connected to the energy of planet Venus. Planet Venus is a planet of beauty, but it's also the planet of perfect proportion. And when I say perfect proportion, I mean balance and harmony and harmonic frequencies, right? So not perfect proportion in the sense of like a human body or anything, although a human body is, part of creation. So that, is not such a bad example either. But anytime you're conceiving of a space that, would be architecturally perfect, you would call it beautiful. But the reason our eye perceives something as beautiful is actually because the proportions of that thing are balanced, right? And so our eye perceives things that are balanced proportionally as beautiful, and things that are not balanced as not so beautiful, right? So the reason that I love the energies of the orchid is because it is a great harmonizer, is how I would describe the energy of that flower. It has this uncanny ability of changing the crystalline grid around it. So everything is energy. I believe that everything is energy. I know that everything is energy. And for me, the more intuitive and the more in tune I become with energy, and in general with the physicality of the world, I notice that when I walk into a space, whether I'd like it or not, I am sensing everything about the energy of that space. And then, of course, the energy of every person that is inside of that space, but that's almost like a separate topic. And so that's why I love orchids so much. I've noticed that, even if the room Because like most of the rooms actually that you would walk into, most of the houses you could be renting are not balanced spaces. There could be many reasons why. There are a lot of distortions in the crystalline grid of the planet Earth. As such, they cause distortions in the waters that flow on top of those crystalline grids. And the water really impacts everything around it. So the underground waters would very much impact the energy of, the ground above, and everything essentially that is built on top of those underground waters. So everything is extremely interconnected. And so given that we're living on a planet that is going through its phase of distortion of energy, it's not a perfect balance by any stretch of imagination. Very often, our internal spaces that we live in our houses don't have the fully balanced grids, just by default, right? I noticed that once I, say I move into a place, I've noticed that I have this urge to buy orchids for every single room of the house. And sometimes I buy two and literally place them on two sides of the room. And, prior to, my awakening, this was just something that I intuitively did. And later, as I started diving into the energies and started getting insights from higher planes, I realized that the energy of the orchid really changes the grid of the room. So you may have a perfectly ordinary room energetically, or you may even have a room that is energetically subpar, right? What could be the reason it's apart? I mean, so many reasons. Let's say that you're renting a house or you're renting an apartment, and the previous couple that lived here used to fight all the time. And so that space still holds their energy, right? And so I noticed that once you bring an orchid into a place like that, literally within a few hours, it's harmonizing the space. The energy starts flowing differently. I highly, highly recommend that you get an orchid for every room of your house if you're not sure that the energies in your house are optimized. That's why orchids are such beautiful house gift. Literally anytime anybody has a housewarming party, I'm showing up with an orchid. I'm just saying. So that's an orchid, but that's not really the main flowers. So it just happened so that Divine Mother selected 3 flowers to help humanity on planet Earth in its current spiritual development, specifically around anchoring the energies of the mother. By the mother, I don't mean motherhood, but the energies of divine feminine. And enabling us to be more balanced individuals. Planet Earth is a very masculine-based planet. There are a lot of masculine energies here. It is a planet that is driven by logic, competition, politics, money. It's a planet where a lot of the traditionally feminine characteristics are perceived as weakness or second class or second rate. And of course, in order for us to be fully balanced and harmonious species, as well as species that can start getting into our spiritual development, we're going to have to integrate more of the other spectrum of energies, the divine feminine. And I find that flowers is a very beautiful, very seamless way of doing that. And it's also a very pleasant way of doing that as well. So 3 divine florals. Why don't we start with the queen of the flowers, which is the rose. The rose is one of my absolute favorite flowers. It hasn't always been this way though. And I swear to God, there is a correlation between how well your divine feminine is integrated and whether you love the smell of the rose or not. So I find that with women that tend to really love roses, their femininity, or at least it doesn't mean that they're more overtly feminine, meaning sometimes you may look at them and they don't maybe look more feminine than other women, but they're carrying within themselves more of a blueprint of Divine Mother. I don't know if you know this, but the essential oil of the rose is the highest vibrational or highest vibrating of any essential oil out there, right? So anytime you're starting to work with the essential oils of florals, and specifically the rose, you're looking to, or as a byproduct, you would end up raising your vibration. So the rose, there are two main roses that we have energetically located in our bodies. The roses are the flowers of the heart, so they have massive heart energies. The two main roses in our etheric body, because I mean, they don't live in the physical body, obviously, but in the energy body. We have a rose located in our heart space and in our higher heart space. So we have two hearts. I mean, obviously not physically, but there is the lower heart, which is more, you know, traditionally how you would think about the heart. And then we have a higher heart, which is here, located here, around your thymus gland, you know, about 2 inches above your heart, but right in the center, not to the left of your body. So that is where the roses dwell. In your heart space, you generally have a red rose, although it may differ, you know, depending on who you are. You may have, your rose color could be different in the heart space. And then in the higher heart, you have a pink rose, but again, it could be different. This is like an overgeneralization. Integrating those roses, tending to them as if they were living flowers that you need to nurture, is one of the better ways I know of connecting to the divinity within your own body and unlocking immense potential and immense abundance for yourself, right? So the energy of the rose lives here. The energy of the rose is all about love, whether that is planetary love, whether that is cosmic love, whether that is love for yourself, love for another, love for life, you know? So all facets of love are contained within the rose. The rose is the flower of compassion. The rose is the flower of beauty. The rose is the flower of connection to your purpose. I find that people who naturally love roses and gravitate to roses are the people who have the most clarity with their mission and with what they came here to do with their path. And the reason being is because the rose really connects you to your intuition in many ways, right? But it's heart-based intuition. You know how very often, especially in school, they would tell you, like, just, you know, you're supposed to make decisions based on logic, like you're supposed to be logical. So heart-based decision making is actually the domain of the Divine Mother, whereas logical or, you know, mind-based decision making is the domain of Divine Masculine. In order for you to be a fully rounded individual, you ideally need both. It's not one or the other. And in fact, I would dare say that for decisions where there are a lot of unknowns, your heart actually knows the way a lot better than your brain does. Because our minds are wired just for pattern recognition, whereas our hearts, they can look beyond the veil, beyond the things that that we have lived, and tap into the collective consciousness, right? That's the job of our hearts. So our roses live here. The lotus flower, I don't think that is going to come as a big surprise, lives in the area of our third eye, so right here. For those people whose third eye is active, I generally am able to see the lotus flower kind of like open and blooming at all time. And we could tell a lot actually by the state of the flowers. You know, if you kind of like go in etherically into a meditation and, you know, you just ask, you know, your flowers to blossom and bloom inside of your body, by the color that they are and, you know, how luscious they are, how nurtured they look, you would be able to tell a lot about the state of your own divine femininity and the femininity within. This, by the way, applies to any gender. So a divine feminine, divine masculine energies are, you know, we each, regardless of whatever gender we identify as, we all have them. We're supposed to have them. And they're supposed to exist in perfect equilibrium. You know, that perfect 50-50. That is, you know, that covetable symbiotic relationship between the two. So the lotus flower. The lotus flower, obviously, in a lot of cultures symbolizes enlightenment. It symbolizes your ability to see beyond what is obvious. It symbolizes your ability to connect to a system of spirit guides. Now, generally speaking, because the lotus flower is the third eye, right? Third eye directionally, right, is the movement that is horizontal. So it's kind of like, seeing in front of you and seeing to the sides of you. That is how our third eyes operate. Whereas the crown center is, right here, right on the top of your head, is a movement upwards, right? So generally speaking, when you're connecting with your immediate spirit guides, they tend to stay, or like your guardian angels, however you want to call them, they tend to stay in your vicinity. So your third eye is going to be your doorway into your immediate spirit guides, right? The ones that are like literally right here with you in this time-space reality. It doesn't mean that they're physical, but again, they're here and they are a lot closer to this dimension, this frequency. Whereas the spirit guides that you would use your crown chakra to connect to are a lot more high dimensional spirits. For instance, if you're trying to connect to your higher self, you would not use your third eye. You would use your crown center. But if you're trying to connect to the planetary Akashic records, for instance, you would use your third eye. So the lotus flower is here, and it is the seat of intuition. It is the seat of intuitive knowing. It is the seat of greater understanding. Your lotus flower is also responsible for you perceiving yourself in relationship to everything else. So this is your center of oneness. And so this is, in many ways, this is a center that would ensure and enable your harmonious relationships, but not with just individuals, because like, let's say if it's a romantic relationship, it generally lives with a heart, and the same thing goes for friendships. But relationships that are more like your relationship with the collective, your relationship with a particular gender, all of those things kind of live upstairs. So they live in your third eye. And so your lotus flower is responsible for that. And then last but not least, as far as divine flowers are concerned, is the lily flower. The lily flower, specifically the white lily for most humans, is located in the palms of our hands, like right here. And so unbeknownst to us, we have all been gifted these gifts, these flowers that are living in our etheric bodies, right? But I would say 99.8% of humanity is unaware that that is the case. And so they're living their lives without knowing that this is an asset that they have, without using it, without leveraging it. What does the white lily represent? The white lily represents divine action. It represents purified action, right? So in general, because our hands are symbolic of action, right? That's why we use it to touch, we use it to perceive, we use it to do things a lot. Some people even talk with their hands, like me. I use my hands a lot to get my point across. And essentially, for those people that have the energy of the lily activated, oh my God, this is so crazy, because like my hand is totally pulsating with a white lily right now. I don't know if you guys can feel it. I'm like getting mad tingles here in my left hand right now as I'm talking to you about the lily, because my lily is fully awakened right now. So she's like, hello. She's like staring at me. Hi, you're cute. Love you. Anyway, so the reason I love activating the white lily in both palms, but one of our hands is receiving and one is a giving. Generally speaking, left is the receiving, right is the giving. Because the left side of our body is the feminine, all about receiving, right side of our body is the masculine, is the giving. This one, apparently my my white lily on my feminine side is like really, really here. And she wants to be known today. But the reason I'm bringing this up is this. The energy of our action very often, or the energy that we would use to create action in the physical, enters and leaves our body through our hands. A lot of it, not 100% of it, but this is one of the major flows of energy in our body. So when the lily is placed in the palm of our hands and when we activate that, our actions become pure because the energy cannot pass in and out without going through the flower. And so it's almost like a filtration mechanism, if that makes sense. And so I know that when my lily is activated, whatever action I take in the physical that day is the most aligned to my path, to the greater good of everybody on planet Earth, as well as my greater good, and to what my higher self wanted, right? Because again, that is just the power of the lily. When my lily is slipping, I can be a little bit in my human, right? Or more in my human. I can do things that could be maybe not fully aligned with where I'm trying to go, right? So I've definitely noticed that, when I need to align more to my path, when I need to, maybe shift direction or shift gears, or anytime I'm going through something major where I'm required to be in action, I prefer to activate my lily energy so that I can be in the purest form of action there is. And what I also mean by the purest form of action, the universe doesn't like wasting energy. I don't know if you guys know that. The universe understands that energy is a resource that should not be squandered around or taken lightly. And so the universe actually, would prefer, right? If you're trying to walk from path A to path B, from point A to point B, the universe would prefer that you would just walk a straight line. That would be like the most optimized path. However, that's not what happens. And most people, once they come into an incarnation and they forget all about the bigger picture, they do this. They do the zigzag. And so essentially, they walk 10,000 times longer, right? Because it's like a winding road. So one thing I noticed about, activating the white lily is you really start aligning to the shortest path between 2 points. Because inspired action, sacred action, divine action, however you want to call it, is the action that gets, essentially like the action where all the fluff is removed and you're only doing the things that are most aligned for you and that are in perfect synchronicity and harmony with who you are and where you're trying to go. And so there's a lot less rework. There's a lot less of walking in the wrong direction or, being faced with a dead end. So that is the power of activating the white lily. The power of activating the rose is actually, like I said, better decision making, right? So if you activate the rose, it's better decision making. It's actually a path that could unlock happiness for you. I believe our happiness actually lives in the heart, like true, deep happiness. Our joy lives in the stomach, but our happiness lives in the heart. And I see so many people pursue and chase happiness, and it's really so hard because unfortunately, planet Earth is a planet where hearts are not as activated as they could be. Most people have their hearts closed down. And so I see, all these books come out on, the science of happiness. And most people actually confuse happiness with pleasure. So most people are pleasure addicts. Trying to find happiness through pleasure is looking for happiness in the wrong chakra and in the wrong energies. Because pleasure lives in the sacral center, that's your orange center. That's 2 chakras down, right? So if you're going into your sacral, yes, you can get pleasure, and pleasure in the moment can feel like happiness, but it's also fleeting, right? Joy is also fleeting. The one that it's in the solar plexus and the yellow center in the middle of your belly here, right? It's also fleeting. That's why joy always needs to be fed. There's all these things that you need to feed. Actually, one of the ways to feed joy is to be in the sun more often. You need that vitamin D. But true happiness, true sustained happiness would always come from your heart center. So I noticed that activating the rose energies not only puts you in fuller alignment with what you're meant to be, not only puts you in better alignment with who you are at soul level, but also enables you to live a more fulfilled and happy life. So that's the beauty of the rose. Not to mention that it enables more flexibility in your life. It enables more gentleness in your life, more nurturing and caring as well. So rose is actually one of the pathways to self-care, which is also another issue because, as I mentioned earlier in this video, most of humanity has their hearts closed at this point in time, which means that not only are they not able to provide other people with the tender love and care that other people need to the degree that these people need them, kind of like meeting them where they are at this point in time. That is why a lot of people actually have a hard time listening, because listening doesn't happen in the ears, it happens in the heart. True listening happens in the heart space. But an even worse symptom is that because your hearts are closed down, right, your relationship with the rose is non-existent or dysfunctional, right? What you're missing out on is self-care. What you're missing out on is self-love, right? And of course, if your cup is empty, you cannot fill everybody else's cups, right? And so let's start there. The fact that our hearts are closed down is actually the reason why so many people feel so lonely, right? Because you don't even have your own best interest at heart, because how could you if you can't even love yourself, right? That creates an incredible sense of loneliness. Not to mention, right? Not to mention that unless you fully open up your heart to the extent that your heart is supposed to be open, your energy cannot rise up properly, right? So not enough goes into your center of self-expression, into your throat center, right? Which is also the karmic center. So your ability to deal with karmic knots, your ability to work on problems in your life is, would become significantly hindered or diminished, right? And of course, like, we're not even talking about the higher centers. Unless you open your rose, it's really hard for you to open your lily, right? And of course, lily is just a different, once you truly live and experience the magic of the lily, you're never going to want to, why am I saying the lily? I meant the lotus, you guys. The lotus is over here. Once you fully experience the magic of the lotus, you would never want to go back, because that is the true escape from the matrix, right? That is the true escape. Maybe escape is the bad word, because I personally don't think there's anything bad with the matrix. I love the matrix. I think that it is a perfect game and a perfect system to help us grow, to help us expand, to help us, be challenged. So there's nothing wrong with the matrix. However, I do think that there is that whole other level of existence that you can only open up and experience if your lotus flower is fully functioning. So that was a quick overview of like the different flowers and kind of like why you need them. And now I wanted to maybe talk to you like really quickly. I wanted to talk to you about how to activate each one, right? And also how to bring them into a loop together, because that is also really, really important. The reason it's important to combine the flowers in one consecutive stream or one combined stream of energy is because divine feminine is never meant to exist in a vacuum. In other words, divine feminine is energy of magnetism, whereas divine masculine is energy of electricity. And so it's a very natural desire for femininity and for women to bring things together, to be like that glue, right? And that's why women very often act better as part of the social group. Women are not meant, or, our femininity is not meant to be the lone wolf. We're not meant to go at it alone, right? And so, bringing the three flowers, the three divine flowers, the three divine pathways together is where you unlock true magic within your own body and your own life as well. So the way I would activate the flowers first, like before we can do any type of energy movement, we have to unlock and activate these flowers. So you would always start with your breath, right? And you would imagine, right, that first you would always want to start activating the rose in your lower heart first. So you would want to start breathing into the center of your chest and imagining, right, that as you're breathing into your emerald center here, right? Your heart chakra is emerald in color. As you're breathing in and the air is entering your lungs, I would want you to imagine that there is like a little rose that's starting to grow and spring from, kind of like grow sprout and just starts to bloom. And pay attention to what kind of rose it is. I would say, again, for a lot of you, it's going to be the red rose. The red rose is, the rose of passion. It is the rose of desire and love. It is the rose of, being active and activated in the physical. It is the rose on a mission. The red rose is easily one of the more, active and out there of the roses, right? It's for the active heart, for people who are meant to be out there and in society and, building relationships and finding love and finding friendships and nurturing all of that, right? There is also the white rose. The white rose is less common, but it is common. That is a rose of purity. That is the rose of sacrifice sometimes, right? So it would be, sacrificing potentially something for a greater good. The white rose also symbolizes truth a lot, right? Which is like the truth and alignment to the path, right? So if you have the white rose opening up in your heart space, for you specifically, it's really, really important to find your own path. It's very important for you to not go and do what somebody else wants you to do. So it's very important for you to have a very strong internal compass and sense of discernment. I'm not going to get into every color of the rose because we're going to be here till the cows come home. But essentially, you would want to open up this rose. And then, while you're at it, might as well just go 2 inches above here to the thymus area, to the thymus gland over here, and open up a pink rose there as well. And you would want to use the power of your breath to help you move through energies. And you want to open these 2 roses in this order. You don't want to start with a higher rose and then go to the lower. You actually want to start with the lower and go to the higher. Because your pink rose, the high rose, always feeds off of the other rose that, is in your lower heart. So it's almost like they are, they have their own energy pathway. And this energy pathway is actually figure 8. And that figure starts in the lower, like in your lower heart with like the lower loop and then loops around to the higher heart like that, right? So once you activate the 2 roses, you can actually imagine energy moving in this figure 8 movement, because combining the 2 roses really would help you open up and anchor that energy even more and really help and leverage your breath to help you move through this, especially if you're sensing any darkness or any blockages in your area. Some people may start coughing actually if they have some blockages in this area. It's completely normal. It's your body naturally trying to cleanse itself of the energies that no longer belong. So just know that is what's happening. Okay, and the same thing goes for your lotus flower, right? Again, you would start breathing here. You would first want to focus on the fact that this area is actually violet or purple, right? So you would want to imagine almost like violet smoke filling in this whole sector right here. This was like a horizontal stripe right here, like this area. You would want to imagine that all of that is purple, and you would deeply breathe into it and watch the lotus flower unfold. And last but not least, you would activate your 2 lilies here in the middle of your palms. Also with the energy of your breath, I find that opening up the one on the left first and then the one on the right is the right way to go. And then the energy, you want to connect the two lilies, and you would connect it with a figure 8 as well. So you would start in the middle between the 2, and one loop is like that and the other loop is like that. So essentially you would do the figure 8 movement between your action like that. And what this does is it balances, right? So like I would hold my hands in a meditative state. I would hold them like that. I would imagine that I have my 2 lily flowers, white lily flowers open right here. And I would do this figure 8 movement because it's actually a really, really good way to balance the left and the right side of your body, your masculine and the feminine, right? That whole balance, right? You know that in our head we have corpus callosum, it's part of our brain that connects the right and the left hemisphere. This kind of does, like this movement of energy figure 8 does that to you energetically. Oh my God, like my hands are, they're tickling like nobody's business. Like she's arrived. She's here. This white lily, really, like just, I'm doing this and she's freaking out. Like she's like, okay, let's get into divine action. I love it. Anyway, so these are the flowers individually. And then you would want to bring them together. And here's how you bring them together. Again, you would start with your heart and you would use the energy of your breath to help you move through this exercise. So first I'll show you what the movement is, and then I'll explain how you would use the energy of your breath. So you would start with the lowest of the roses, and then you would move from the lowest rose to the highest rose to the lotus, and then you would move to the lily, right? So essentially you would do this like loop like that, almost like a circle, but it's not quite a circle, but pretend that it is, right? This loop over here, right? And then once you come back to center, you want to come back to your rose, you want to do the same thing in the other direction. So like that, right? Does it make sense? I hope so, right? And then you would put the 2 loops together. So essentially, this is what the movement should be. Rose, rose, lotus, lily, going back to the rose, rose, lotus, that other lily. So it's like this. This is the big movement. This is the big 8. This is why you showed up to listen to this episode. Until you do this, you don't know what's happening with the divine feminine energies in your body. They're not fully integrated. Now, how would you use your breath? So you would, first start with 3 deep breaths. And you always want to exhale through your mouth just to release, right? You would do 3 of those. And then on the inhale, right, you would do the like loop to the left side of your body. You would be like, and then on the exhale, you would do the same thing to the, the right side of your body. And essentially you would stay here for 10 breaths and you would complete 10 loops like that. By the end of this exercise, your divine feminine is going to be activated like nobody's business. It would be on fire, you guys, right? So, any of the benefits that I described for the flowers, you would be able to essentially reap the benefits of that fairly quickly. But in general, you would feel so much better. You would feel so much more aligned. You would feel so much more you, and you would feel like, there's all these energies coming from, and, that are making you feel so good and making you feel like you're, like your sense of self-worth is coming into equilibrium, right? Some of your, blockages or things that used to stop you really disappear. There's, the benefits of this energy practice are so many, like I couldn't even begin to tell you. More intuitive, better dreams, a better sleep, actually, because a divine mother is also responsible for sleep, less anxiety, less depression, if not, over time. This actually aligns your center so much, right, that the energy starts coursing through your body quite naturally. So, if you do this as, a frequent exercise, it would help you deal and work through depressive states as well. So there are the benefits of this are, there's just so many. They're endless is the word that I was looking for. So yeah, I hope that this was helpful. I am totally grateful to the Rose for presiding over this Rose episode. Thank you for showing up. And let me know in the comments if you try this. If you let me also know if you've ever worked with the energy of the flowers, or if you have a favorite flower and there's anything special that you noticed about the magic of the flower, kind of like what I shared about the orchid. I love florals, and I think I'll be doing more episodes on that. But for now, I'm sending you all a big virtual hug. Love you so much. I'll see you in the next episode.